Hey, this is Steve Halleck of TikToking. As always, you can find me at Steve Halleck on Instagram and at TikToking.com. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications bell so you can be the first to see these things. Today, I'm going to do probably the most difficult review that I've done in the history of this channel. I am morally conflicted in this one. It calls into question a lot of almost more spiritual aspects of collecting and psychological and all sorts of things that are really tricky. But that's why I thought it was really interesting. So let's dig into it. Before you see what kind of looks like a Richard Mille. We have to all get that out of the way at first. But this is actually from a company called Blackout Concept. They're based in Switzerland. I can only assume that the parts are made in China, maybe assembled there. I'm not sure. They don't give a ton of information, but the prices would suggest such a thing. And okay, so this isn't the normal thing that I would have on this channel. So let me start at the beginning. About a year ago, I saw this pop up on Instagram. I'm not sure why I even followed them or how they came up or if it was an ad or what exactly it was, but I saw it come up and I thought, whoa, that's kind of weird and interesting. Somebody knocked off a Richard Mille. But they did it with a tourbillon and in a forged carbon case. Okay, so it caught my eye. I dismissed it, whatever. I dismiss a lot of things. And then it came back again, and I saw it a few times. And at some point I thought, this is actually kind of interesting. Richard Mille is so insanely priced for what they are. A forged carbon case tourbillon Richard Mille, as of this moment, which I'm filming this in February of 2022, would be over $1 million. Any one that they make, market price is over $1 million for a forged carbon case Richard Mille tourbillon. This watch is 2,000 Swiss francs. So, by the time you get it here in the US, it's under $2,500. Okay. So this presents an interesting conundrum, right? It's still pretty cool. Looks a lot like a Richard Mille, has a real tourbillon, a real forged carbon case. So what are we dealing with here? So I decided, whatever, I'm going to spend the $2,000 and I'm going to buy one of these things and just see what $2,000 gets you, basically, in this world. And they were pre-orders, so it took several months to get it. And then I have to say I got it and it arrived broken. But I sent it back and they fixed it and sent it back to me. And any watch can arrive broken. I'm sure Richard Milles have been delivered broken. I've gotten lots of high-end brands, and sometimes a brand new watch just doesn't work or it gets damaged in shipping or whatever. So I don't necessarily knock the brand for that. And they did, as I say, they handled it and they fixed it up and they got it back to me. I paid for it with my own money. They didn't ask me to do a review. I just bought this thing and I wanted to bring it to you guys. So let's dig into exactly what it is first. Like I said, it is a flying tourbillon. That's the only function that's here other than obviously time telling. It is a forged carbon case. Now the case has sort of these indentations and things. That's the most non-Richard Mille thing about this watch. It's the one thing where I can say it's like a sort of unique stylistic decision. And on the side here too, has all of these things. I don't know if they have to do that for copyright protection. I don't know if they just chose that as a design thing. But that's kind of the big differences here. Otherwise, this is Richard Mille all the way. It has a rubber strap that is the exact rubber straps that Richard Milles come on with these vents. And I must say that the rubber strap itself is exactly like the Richard Mille rubber straps. It feels the same. It's that same kind of silicone rubber. The proportions are the same. And if you're familiar with Richard Mille and their straps, A Richard Mille rubber strap costs almost the same as this entire watch. And they're really hard to get, which is crazy. So we're already in the realm of pure craziness here, but let's keep going. You see it's got a manual wind, 2-barrel movement that is fully open worked. You can see my finger behind it there. The movement, I must say, is not a kind of Richard Mille looking movement. It almost is done more in the way of like an Audemars Piguet 15305 or 15307. It's kind of that type of open working, and it's not bad. The tourbillon is ugly. The tourbillon cage is ugly. I wish that they had at least maybe PVC'd the cage itself or done something to change the coloring, because it just doesn't look cool at all. It looks like every other Chinese tourbillon does, and so you can immediately spot that. But the quality isn't bad. The overall finishing isn't bad. It's obviously industrial. You don't have anybody doing a lot of handwork on these things, but that's kind of the case in a lot of modern watchmaking right now, even from the very high-end stuff. So I'd say to the naked eye, aside from some things here or there, it doesn't look a whole lot different than the movement of an AP 15305 or something like that. I'm not saying that it's equal. It's definitely not equal, but you're talking like one is 95% good and the other's maybe like 88% good or something like that. And when you're just looking at it, or if a normal person off the street who wasn't really familiar with both, they would think they're fairly close to the same thing. The case also is very similar to a Richard Mille case. I'm not a materials expert. I don't know a ton about forged carbon. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know what would make one much different than another, but I have owned forged carbon Richard Milles, and I'm holding this, and I don't particularly see any real difference. Now, the screws, they use these black, just sort of like Allen key screws versus the proprietary Richard Mille screws that all look better. So again, you're talking like this is maybe 90% good and theirs is 95% good. One thing that is noticeably different when you pick this up, it is much heavier than a forged carbon Richard Mille would be. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, this back plate is some other material. I don't know if it's probably just steel, and it's fairly thick, and it's not particularly good looking. It has even the serial number and everything is just printed on it. It's not engraved or anything. It's just very plain steel back plate. And that probably has some real weight to it. The Richard Mille would have a forged carbon back plate as well, so you wouldn't have any of that weight. And also the movement itself is kind of much sort of thicker and heavier than a Richard Mille movement would generally be. So I'm sure you get weight there as well. But overall, very similar. I must say, I'm not sure exactly what it is. Maybe it's something to do with that thickness of the movement, like I was saying. But it doesn't have sort of the three-dimensionality and depth that you get usually with Richard Milles. It just doesn't look as dramatically deep as I'm used to with that. But it's still pretty good. You still have the curved, this is a sapphire crystal on the front and the back. And you have the numerals floating on a crystal that are on a different plane right above the movement. So those are all the kind of characteristic Richard Mille design things. And those are here as well, and done to a, perfectly acceptable quality level. Now, here's where this gets kind of weird, right? So I'm of multiple minds of this watch. First of all, I don't like knockoffs. Another hobby of mine is I like furniture. I have a lot of sort of iconic contemporary design couches and sofas that people would recognize the names of and stuff. And you can buy like a knockoff, say like Ligne Roset Togo which would be, you get a sectional from them. It's 25 grand or something, but it's just foam sectional pieces, and you can buy a knockoff for $1,000. And I don't really support that. First of all, they're never as nice, and you always know it. And these are iconic design things, and I believe there is some reason to buy the original ones over the knockoffs. I could go deeper into it, but I just have that's my kind of overall viewpoint on these sorts of things. However, you get into something like this, and now you're talking not 25,000 and 2,000, but you're talking $1 million or 1.2 million and 2,000. And also, one of the reasons why these watches are, the actual Richard Milles are so expensive is because, or statedly because of the materials and the quality and whatever. And I do believe that that people should be challenged on those sorts of claims. And I'm not saying that it's not. They're obviously better. Like in every single way, the real thing is obviously better. But I think it's legitimate to question the orders of magnitude here. And that's why I wanted to get one in my hands and see it myself. And I don't even have a really good conclusion on that. I'm still kind of wrestling with it myself, but I wanted to bring you this review, and I'm really interested in your thoughts in the comments. Now, the other thing that this calls into question and makes kind of interesting is that these objects, you can't convince yourself that it's not a Richard Mille. When you have it, you know what it is. I know that this is a Blackout Concept. I know that this is $2,000. I know that it's a knockoff, basically. And for that reason, it just doesn't feel as cool. I look at it and my brain looks at it and says, oh, this isn't as cool. And I don't even know why it's not as cool, because then I objectively look and I'm like, well, that case kind of seems the same and everything seems sort of similar. And I could see it saying Richard Mille on it and it wouldn't be that crazy and whatever. But then overall, I'm just like, this really isn't that cool. And I don't even know what I would do with this thing. And so even in reviewing it or coming up with an opinion, it's like we're not programmed to deal with this kind of a situation, and it's difficult for me to even bring to separate my own bias and preconceived notions from my thoughts. And that's been a really interesting experience for me, because I think that is applicable to anything in this hobby. You don't want to fall into just an emperor's new clothes type of situation. We all like to think of ourselves as sort of very sophisticated collectors and connoisseurs, and me especially. I've run my collecting and my business through this lens of really being into stuff that other people aren't that into, and keeping my own taste and my own counsel. But at the end of the day, we're obviously affected by brand and by perception and I'm not even talking about what other people would think, because I think you have a good chance that almost anybody else in the real world, if they know Richard Mille, would think this is a Richard Mille on your wrist. So I'm not even saying that, but what you know and what you think, it definitely changes the experience of owning and wearing the object. So that's been a really interesting thing to see in this kind of case. Anyway, I struggle with those things. I'd love to open that discussion down in the comments, or on Instagram or wherever. I'm interested to hear what you guys think. But let me keep going through this. The buckle also is really impressive. It's the sort of exact kind of spring-loaded deployant that was originally made by Chanel. They own a company that makes cases and buckles and stuff, and they developed this for their ceramic watches. And this is exactly what Richard Mille uses on their watches. Of course, it's a knockoff of it, basically, but it's the exact type of buckle, also the same buckle that MB&F uses, and I think Urwerk uses them if they do deployants, although I don't think they all often do, so maybe they don't. But lots of the kind of newer brands, if they do a deployant, do this kind of spring-loaded deployant. And this seems to work. It works perfectly well, and it feels perfectly good. And maybe it'll fall apart at some point, and maybe if I looked closer at it, I could see reasons why it's not as good. I'm sure it's not as good. It's obviously not as well finished and stuff like that. But overall, it's a buckle. It holds the watch. It works perfectly fine, and it's the exact same kind of buckle, right? So those are the sorts of compromises and things that you find all over when you're dealing with this thing. You're just like, it's basically the same buckle. It's the same, this buckle from Richard Mille or from any of these companies would cost the same amount as this whole watch cost. And this is perfectly adequate and works the same and still has the very cool springy spring-loaded deployant thing and whatever. So, and again, the strap is really, really nice, super comfortable, really flexible. The vents are great, really, really nice. The case, the forged carbon is cool. It has that same kind of wavy texture, that same thing where it kind of lights up in certain light. This is the all black one. They make it in a bunch of different colors. It'll be like, if let's say the yellow one has a yellow strap, yellow crown, and then this surrounding case thing is yellow. I like the all black because look, let's face it, at the end of the day, this is basically a knockoff watch. So if you're actually going to wear it or do anything with it, you don't need to, draw that much attention to it. I don't need it to be all yellow. So fine, all black, cool. It's stealth. It's something I can wear when I go play with my kids or whatever. It still is a watch. It still is a tourbillon. I don't see any reason to totally dismiss it, So, and the other thing is, people ask me all the time, or just like normal people, right, that are never going to spend $1 million on a watch, let alone, they're not even going to spend, $5,000 or $10,000. What is there a cool watch that I could get for $2,000? And there really isn't. There isn't that much. So I don't know if I would recommend this. Again, it calls into all of those really interesting questions, and people can differ in opinions on them. And I don't know how I feel about it. And I don't know that I would say, yeah, absolutely, you can get this really cool thing and it's $2,000, but it's a knockoff, basically. I think that's kind of, it's not so good, But look, if it's not a Richard Mille, it doesn't say Richard Mille on it. It's not a fake watch. It's not trying to be something else. It is sort of, but it is what it is. And it still is a tourbillon. It's a forged carbon case. It's the type of thing that 99.999999% of people on planet Earth could never afford the other thing. And so if they do want to own a tourbillon that is cool and they could wear and in a carbon case and with these cool aesthetics, it's hard for me to morally say that that's not okay. When the one is just so out of reach and so crazy. So that's kind of, I don't know, ultimately that's where I end up landing a lot of the time on this. Let me show it to you on the wrist. Again, it looks a lot like a Richard Mille, but it just doesn't feel cool. I wear it and I'm like, this isn't that cool. Whereas I put a Richard Mille on and I'm like, wow, that's the coolest thing. But it's basically a Richard Mille. I mean, it's so close. So I think ultimately I can very clearly say fake watches suck. If somebody wears something that's like if this said Richard Mille on the dial, and it was trying to copy a specific Richard Mille model, then I for sure would be 100% against it. But ultimately, let's look at round watches. At some point, somebody made round wrist watches in whatever cases, and they use maybe Breguet numerals, and they use a certain type of hands, or people copy each other all the time in their hand choice and typeface choice and case proportions, case shape, crown shape, whatever. It's not that uncommon. Richard Mille just happens to have made such a unique and iconic thing that if somebody makes another one, it looks obviously exactly like it, and you can very easily call it out as a copy. But I don't know. Now I'm just gonna ramble, but I want to show it to you. You can see it hugs the wrist just like a Richard Mille. I don't know. It looks really cool. I don't know what you can buy for $2,000 that's cooler than this. So, man, where do we end up? Is this a total poser watch? Did I support terrible people that are ruining art and design and knocking off things in the world? Or do we stick it to the man and start buying $2,000 Chinese-made watches instead of overpriced, overhyped crap? Where do we end up on this, guys? Let me know down in the comments. Please hit subscribe, hit like. Look, I just paid I got no use for this watch. I don't know what the heck I'm gonna do with it. I paid $2,500 or something all in just to get this here, just to make this video for you guys, basically. So I'm trying to invest in this channel, trying to make some cool videos for you guys. I hope you're enjoying it. Please let me know what you think. Hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, send it to your friends. I want everybody's opinions. Let's keep this going. Thanks a lot. Have a great week. Bye-bye.